Welcome back to ET with GOTB. Well, the WSL returned from the international break with a bang. So much drama to get through, so let's get into it. I'm Rachel.
I'm Sophie.
And this is Extra Time with Girls on the Ball. Welcome back to the latest episode. If you are watching us on YouTube, you can see that we are back in London, baby. You can tell from Sophie's face that she's delighted to be away from the seaside. But back in our own little, soon-to-be more studio-looking studio.
Rachel's determined in the next 2 months that we're here to turn this into a studio. So we'll see how that gets on.
Well, the way you can keep up to date with that is if you are subscribed to us wherever you watch your podcasts, and subscribe wherever you listen as well, so you do not miss an episode. Make sure you're following us as well across all of our social media channels. We are at Girls on the Ball on everything. Okay, we've loads to get through, but we're going to try and keep it short and sweet. From epic comebacks to goals from the tightest of angles and managerial sackings coming out of our ears. And the small matter of, just relegation on the chopping board. First, we are going to chat through the WSL games, pulling out, some of the key pointers, looking at the results, the impact of those results on the WSL table. We'll have a look at how the championship table is shaping up. So you are then going to pick a player of the week, plus shine a spotlight on a moment of magic, a goal, a tactic, something that impressed you. And then you're going to tease our viewers/listeners with your team of the week that have yet to be done, but we are going to put out on our social media channels. So
if I actually remember anything, it seems like the weekend seems like 3 years ago.
Yeah, just as after I pressed record, she said, what happened this weekend? So.
What happened in the last 48 hours to make it 3 weeks ago?
You are in for a great episode, guys.
It's going to go well.
Finally, we will have a quick chat about the news coming out from WPLL. We won't dwell too long on it because we haven't been shy about our thoughts and opinions, and we have shared them across our platforms as well. So we won't go into too much detail. And we did a later pod last weekend, so it really feels like we've touched on some of the managerial sackings, but not all. So we'll go through any other business.
And I will also try and get a piece out about it at some point.
Sophie's going to try and get her thoughts on paper, if you're very lucky. If you fancy,
so I think that might be better.
If you can make sense of it. Okay, Barclays, WSL, this weekend. This is a good reminder for you, Sophie, given you're going to chat to me about it now. Manchester United 2, Leicester 0, Mallard and Galton with the goals. Aston Villa 0, Everton 2, Mjelda and Hayashi with the goals there. Crystal Palace 0, Liverpool 1, Matthews with that sole goal. Spurs 1, Manchester City 2. England, Miedema and Fugino with the goals. Brighton 2, Chelsea 2. Olaslagers, Losada, Baltimore and James scoring there. And then Arsenal 4, West Ham 3. Kelly, McCabe, Williamson, Caldente, Tiziak ×2 and Martinez getting the goals in a drama-filled match. It means that the table looks like this. Chelsea remain on top on 41 points, but the gap has reduced a little bit to 5 points to Manchester United in second place on 36. Arsenal are in third on 33 points.
Cue everyone getting very excited.
Well, also, I was about to say, cue all Irish people being super impressed, and maybe not just Irish people, that I pronounced 33 points. Thank you very much. And Manchester City are below in fourth on 31. Yes, everyone's getting super excited
about
because
the 5 point gap.
5 points is so much less than 7. Oh my God. But yes, at least it's close, guys. Okay, we'll celebrate that at least. Down the bottom of the table, Crystal Palace remain on 6 points, with Aston Villa above on 10, and then Leicester on 12. So yeah, a gap, a little bit of a gap for Crystal Palace. They need to start getting some wins under their belt to try and ease the pressure.
Who do they play next?
Why did you ask me that? I don't have that kind of stuff.
Villa next.
Oh, you know this stuff, but you don't know what happened last weekend.
Yes, I know what's happening in 2 weeks' time.
How helpful.
They play Aston Villa next. That is absolutely...
Sorry, also, that's 2 weekends away. How the hell am I going to know
that? Because it's FA Cup this weekend. But in the next league game, they play Aston Villa, and that is absolutely ginormous in terms of... Ginormous. In terms of impact. I mean, if they don't win that one, I think it's done.
Wow. Let's jump ahead to 2 weeks from now.
I mean, if they lose that one, it's definitely done.
Okay. Shall we crack on with what's happening now? Okay. Right. The game that you went to, the most exciting game, Sophie. Well, to be fair, it turned into quite an exciting fixture when initially maybe you thought it wasn't going to be that interesting. Crystal Palace versus Liverpool. And then they both sacked their managers within about 24 hours of each other. But Managerless Liverpool, well, interim manager they have, travelled to Palace, who have a brand new manager, Leif Smerd, who they unveiled barely as soon as Laura Kaminsky was out the door. He was in. So he's got quite the job on his hands. You watched this one. What were your kind of key takeaways from it?
I think it was very clear that both clubs had undergone a little bit of a turmoil. A little bit. I say a little bit. A lot of turmoil in the last 48 hours. I think the one with the consistency was obviously Liverpool. Amber Whiteley has been at the club for quite some time. She was the assistant under Matt Beard. She was the interim manager before the last time they had an interim manager.
Do you remember the last time that happened, where a club just went interim, new manager, interim, new manager?
So she is very well known to the players, and while they changed their tactical setup, which I think surprised Crystal Palace, it was quite clear that they were quite settled under that, and they should have been 2 or 3 up by half time. I think it took Crystal Palace a half to get back into the swing of things. I think, I spoke to Alison Swaby after, who had the captain's armband, and she said it's just been a bit of a disruptive week, and the first half maybe we were a bit all over the place, but the second half we really got some messages across and started to play some football, and they could have salvaged a draw. I think Mikato had a double save from Rachel Laws late on, so she could have salvaged a point. So they did get their way back into it. I think it was a big ask, though, of them and the manager within the space of 48, 24 hours to really turn things around. And they will be looking. They've got Chelsea in the Cup this week, and they've got Villa at home the following week in the league, and just going to be massive for them.
It sounds a bit like, though, Palace's season all over, where they get themselves back into games. They could have gotten something out of it and didn't. So as I said, it is going to be a big job for the new manager. And I said up front it was a lose-lose situation instead of a win-win situation, in that if he keeps them up, amazing. If he doesn't, you can pass the blame elsewhere, kind of.
Yeah, it won't be on him, but I think if you do a Hail Mary like that, Steve Parish and the board will be wanting immediate results, because otherwise, what's the point?
Well, as we know, generally these boards' expectations are totally grounded and absolutely based on all of the investment that they've put in, and generally not at all miles away from expectation.
What did I say? It was like putting a plaster on a gash, or taking
I said it was like giving someone a pair of clogs to run a marathon.
Yeah.
Do you like that?
Yeah.
That's a good one. Okay, I was at Spurs Manchester City, and I tell you what, this is a great game for the neutral. It was really exciting to watch. This was the most comprehensive and disciplined performance that I've seen from Spurs this season. It was like the Spurs of last season, and I thought it was going to be really interesting because they're a team who have struggled at both ends of the pitch. I thought Manchester City's front line with Miedema at the back, behind, I should say, looked frightening.
I was going to say at the back.
At the back, sorry.
She had joked midweek about being asked to play in defence. So I was like,
I meant like at the back of the front line, which is a stupid way of saying it. But no, you know what I mean? Kind of just dropping in behind looked quite frightening. And actually, Spurs started the game absolutely the better side. They pinned Manchester City back for the first opening 10 minutes. They just couldn't get out of their half, which I was really impressed with. Should have capitalised on that. But then Manchester City went and scored with their first attacking play of the game, a Miedema header. So that just kind of shows you that's what makes the top teams the top teams, is that they take those opportunities. I
think your message to me was, the first message was, I did not have Man City not being able to get out of their own half on my bingo card. Next, scrap that. Viv scored.
Viv has sorted it. So it was still, though, game very finely in the balance. And unfortunately, Martha Thomas had started the game in the 9 and then unfortunately got injured. And it wasn't great. I saw her coming out of the dugout, out of the tunnel in a boot. But she came off and Beth England stepped up. And I'd say within about 90 seconds of Beth Mead stepping into that number 9 role, she scored. So they drew level, which was really impressive. But I think it was a fairly finely balanced game. I thought Spurs did create chances. They were very unlucky not to score more. But then I thought Manchester City's substitutions were really smart. And while they didn't, score the second goal, it was Fagino who scored the second goal, a lovely goal from her. I did feel like the substitutions just swung the momentum and just injected a little bit of pace and intensity. And you could just kind of feel like they were going to get that second goal. But all in all, a really good game, quite a feisty game. And I think for Man City, a very busy month coming up. The main thing was get this win, get down to London, get the win, however possible. And that's the main takeaway from that. I spoke to Gareth Taylor afterwards and he was like, look, we can't analyse that game too much. I said to the girls afterwards, we're not going to analyse the game too much. The main thing is we've come down here and got the win and on to the next one, because they cannot afford to dwell, can they?
No, they can't.
And they're back down in London now, Wednesday night to play West Ham. So yeah, a very busy month for them. And most of the games in the month are, of course, Chelsea. But potentially for Spurs, something they can build on. You know, I think that'll give them a lot of confidence that actually these things can click together, and hopefully they can build on that, because they are now into, what, 6th?
Yeah, it's definitely not, you know, it's been really, really choppy for them and they haven't played like they played last year. But I think when we spoke to Robert Villaham last week, it's very clear about the process that he has involved, and he's trying to find that balance between the two. So, and he knows as well as anyone, and the players will know as well as anyone, that, you know, it's not been the best season and the performances haven't been the level that they want them to be. But as you say, foundations could be the springboard for a nice end to the season for them.
Quite possibly. Got home just in time to catch the Arsenal West Ham game, which I was watching on the train. Then I got home and got about 70 minutes of it from the couch, which was much nicer. Jesus, that was a wild game. There were, for me, one of the takeaways, I guess, was seeing some errors of old creeping back into Arsenal's game in the first half. Defending set pieces was not good, looking really shaky in defence. Steph Catley was kind of looked at 6s and 7s at times.
She was in America at times.
In the back. And I thought Shakira Martinez was fantastic for West Ham.
Such a baller.
She's an absolute terror for defenders.
She's completely changed her attack.
It's amazing, and she split the defence so many times, and it just kind of made me think of, like, you know, this is a bit of a rogue one, but in NFL when they, you know, snap the ball and the person trying to mark whoever's, whatever they're called, running for the ball or trying to get the ball, they don't know where to look over their shoulder. They're kind of like looking left, I've got him on my left, suddenly he's on my right. And it was that kind of vibe, but they were like, where is she? Where is she gone? Because she was causing them all sorts of problems, and got a deserved goal in the second half. Because initially I thought, you know, West Ham going in 2-0 up, really impressive performance, great goals from Tiziak, great for West Ham to have her back as well. I thought, right, next goal's key. If Arsenal get a goal, you know, well, they got the one goal just before half time. I thought, if Arsenal get one early, this could be a different game. And no, it was West Ham who went 3-1 up. And I genuinely thought it's going to be very difficult for them to get back into it. And I think, had that been Arsenal of last season, I'm not sure they would have got back into it.
I think Arsenal have a resilience about them these days that gives them the confidence to be able to find a way back into games. You could see they weren't really panicking. I think Leah Williamson and Chloe Kelly said afterwards, and it's easy to say with hindsight, but they both felt confident that they could find a way back into the game. I think under Renee Slegers, I think both times I've really seen her challenged, and there's been a couple of times, but both times I've really seen her challenged were Bayern Munich just before the break, and then this one, and she was willing to change quite quickly. She was willing to bring off Leah Volti and Kim Little, which is not easily done. You know, they're two legends of Arsenal, they're two real stalwarts of that midfield. They've given so much for so long, but she recognised that that was where the weakness was, and she brought in Cara Cooney-Cross, who I think has this season played herself into that starting role.
She's revolutionised.
She's made herself the one that's ahead of either of those two, I think. Not just because they're injured or out. I think she is the front runner, and I do think that if she hadn't been in America for She Blue, she would have started that game. So she changed the game. Renee Slegers changed the game, and I think the 3 goals in 8 minutes obviously changed the game. You get the momentum right, and you completely shock the opposition. And the way that Katie McCabe scored that goal was absolutely superb. I'll talk about it later. But that one really changed the momentum. Then you had the Leah Williamson header, lovely header by the way, just a few minutes later, and then you had the ridiculous handball.
That was so funny.
I don't know. I understand she was trying to protect her face, but defenders don't protect her face.
Every time I see the replay, it makes me burst out laughing because it's the most. But if you're watching on YouTube, sorry. If you're listening on podcast, I'm choking now. It's so funny. It was the 2 hands up. It was always like, it's fine, I'll just catch it. And then it was like, oh.
But yeah, I think it just changed the complete momentum, obviously. And West Ham sometimes do buckle under that pressure. Sometimes when they are feeling like they're losing the kind of momentum in the game, they can lose their way. But I thought they battled back really strongly. I mean, they had 2 shots, like a save and one
that clearance off the line. Beth Mead, right at the death. Like, I think absolutely a performance they can be proud of. And something I noticed across the games, and we're going to get to the Chelsea game, of course, but like, was the impact of the international break on the teams at the top. I was really quite surprised at. And I think as well, for the teams at the top, coming back after this international break going, this is going to be a bloody big month. And I guess managers having to manage time, like what players to play, what games to prioritise. Every game's important. It's a really challenging time.
Yeah, I think it's it's that loading. I mean, you saw across the board, other than the Steph Catley, like the Australians were rested, even for West Ham. Katrina Gorey
Japanese players,
Japanese players were rested as well, and it's really about managing that time. So you can't really show your full cards. And West Ham had enough. I mean, I think they were helped by Arsenal's shoddy defending at corners, but they had enough impetus about them to be able to take the game by the scruff of the neck in that first half, especially. But I do think, yes, across the board, you're right. There is disruption, not just to the big sides. No. The next game we're going to talk about, I think, was disruption.
Absolutely.
Of international break.
Leah Williamson said something afterwards, which I don't know if she was exaggerating or whether if it's a legitimate stat, but she said West Ham had 110 corners to defend this season and not conceded one, and she was determined to score one. And I just thought, like, sometimes you see the stats that come out, the Opta stats, and we look through them and they're really interesting, and I often wonder how much of that is actually known around the team, because sometimes you use them to ask questions at press conferences. So I just thought that was a really interesting one, and actually well done to West Ham for being so solid defending set pieces up until now. Okay, next up, Manchester United Leicester. They kicked off the WSL games this weekend. Another win for United. They have 100% start in 2025, quietly going about their business. In the first half, I do think United should have done better, because Leicester looked a bit lost early on, and United were dominant. I said they just look a bit like they're running around like headless chickens. There was no kind of calmness about how they were trying to defend. They just seemed a little bit lost. And I think, United had 10 shots, but only 2 on target. Maybe it was missing Turland, their target woman. But I do think in that first half, and maybe something United need to get better at, is ruthlessness, because they're not always necessarily consistent across 90 minutes. So in those moments, I think they should have put the game, I mean, it was 2-0, but really put the game out of reach in that first half, because Leicester did come back better in the second half. And I said to you, like, they really are missing Mamiki, particularly. Takarada, they were on the bench. They didn't come on. Mamiki didn't come on until the second half, and I do think made a difference. And it was understandable. Amandine Mikel was most likely resting them after the international break. So another example of difficult decisions and what they result in.
Yeah, I think she sounded really disappointed about their first half. And there will be context around it, but I think what illustrated or exemplified the whole first half, epitomised it, was the first goal for Melvin Mallard, where I think United literally had to pass it in a straight line.
She cut through them like a knife through hot butter.
I mean, I don't know what
a hot knife through butter.
They were literally doing nothing in the central area, because it went from Letizia to Elatoon to Melvin Mallard, and basically in a straight line. And she got the better of the defender. I think it was Julie Thibault. She broke past her and just put it in the back of the net. There was nothing the goalie could do about it. So I do think they will be disappointed in that. But at the end of the day, for Leicester, they will have looked at that game as kind of a free hit.
Yeah.
And not that they will have gone into it. Everyone wants to win every game and get points out of every game. But it wasn't one they would have had on their scorecard as the ones that they have to win.
Especially not having their full range of players available to them.
So they will have learned a lot from it. I think the second half was really positive, the way they responded. And they'll take a lot from that going into Chelsea midweek. And she knows Sonia Bonpastor so well.
Oh, yes. So I forgot about that.
It's their French reunion. They know each other.
And wasn't it going to be raging?
Wasn't it Sonia last time who said that she always does something to surprise me, Amandine? So we'll see what that surprise is this time around.
So it does mean, as I said, United are now 5 points behind Chelsea. Leicester, though, are winless in 13 away WSL games with Chelsea coming up as well. So that's, not ideal for them. Okay, Aston Villa versus Everton. Not the first time we've said this about Everton, but with less possession, less shots created and less shots on target, and less touches in the box, they've gotten more out of the game than Villa did. And I think that's something that's massively shifted for them since the January transfer window. I thought early on in the season they couldn't buy a goal despite the opportunities they were creating. And now they're starting to take their opportunities, even if they are coming in the form of a defender. Marmielda scoring a first goal for Everton. But yeah,
what happens when you have a striker up front who hassles and harries? And yes, you didn't get in Kelly Gargo, didn't get on the Antonio Payne, but both of them combined, like they don't, it just changes the dimension of a team, I think, and it makes them much more confident when they're on the ball and that they can get goals. And I think that just permeates through the whole team.
But Villa looked stronger in the first half, so they would have been annoyed that they came out of that game with nothing. They did have to deal, obviously, with a goalkeeper injury midway through the game, which is a difficult thing to, I guess, have to deal with. And then the second goal was a fumble and an error, not something they're going to want to look back on. But should there be concern for Villa? Because I thought they'd looked good in the first couple of matches under Natalia, but they're struggling in front of goal.
That's the thing. I think there is a worry because, given what we were saying about the next game they have in the league, that's kind of that proverbial 6-pointer, right? And if they win that, they're safe. I'm pretty sure they're safe. But they are in this uncomfortable position where if something goes wrong or they don't take their chances and Crystal Palace have a good day in front of goal, then you're going to be worried. And I think that's the problem for Natalia, is that she's come in, and while she came in earlier than the likes of Leif, I think it's she hasn't had all that much time to deal with this structure. I think there's obviously hangover from the first part of the season and all of the Robert DePau stuff that kind of happened. But they do have the quality. You can't deny that they have the quality on the pitch in the form of like Rachel Daly, Jordan Nobbs. They've got the quality to keep them up and the experience to keep them up. But there will be a few concerned fans and heads around Aston Villa, I think, at the moment.
Absolutely. Okay, we've maybe saved the most shocking till last. Brighton-Chelsea. Shock of the weekend. Brighton held Chelsea to a draw.
Though Brighton have always troubled Chelsea.
Yes, I think they fully deserved something out of this game and could have come away with the win. But having looked at how Brighton had been over the last few games, I wouldn't have expected this. They were playing with confidence and commitment to their style of football. They looked comfortable in and out of possession. They weren't, panicking when Chelsea were coming at them. Obviously, Kirby being back is a massive part of how they play that style of football. And I do think you have to factor in, I do think Chelsea struggled with players coming back, but also Germa starting, playing three at the back. It was almost a bit too much new too soon.
Yeah, it's a weird time to change the system, and maybe it was more down to personnel because Niamh Charles had a niggle than anything. I know Sonia Pastoral kind of wants to play three at the back. I'm still not convinced that that's the right way forward. I think they've been doing quite well with their four at the back, but we'll see how that goes. I think in terms of Brighton, can we just shout out Madison Haley as well?
Because she's been brilliant.
No, she won't get the plaudits or the headlines most days, but I think she is absolutely superb at what she does in the front three, and the way that she runs, the strength that she has, her pace, her ability on the ball, but also her defensive ability as well.
Yeah.
She really does do an awful lot of the groundwork for that team, and she helps Nikita Paris do what she does as well. So shout out to her, because I thought she was brilliant as well. Real positive for Brighton. They've had a really tough 2025 so far, really, really tough. I think they were looking very, very lost, and this will give them a lot of confidence going forward. And yeah, it's a good point for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, to be honest, Chelsea were pleased to have just gotten that game out of the way.
And by the way, it was offside. I don't know why articles keep saying it may have been offside. It was offside, the goal.
The one I'd seen was, I know that one was offside, but the one I'd seen was the clip up of, I think it's Sandy Baltimore trying to cross the ball in on the end line and a Brighton player on the ground, and it hits her arm. And I'm like, if you're going to try and call that a handball, because it's the...
So in the laws of the game, if it's a standing arm...
That's holding you up.
That's holding up, but it's not a handball. It's not a penalty.
Okay.
So I know it hits her hand twice, because it hits her hand the first standing arm, and then she goes in, she keeps going, turns around, and her other hand is down. the second time and it hits her hand again. But because it's her standing arm, it can't be a penalty.
But I just thought it was funny. Like, if you're going to mention that, you kind of have to mention the offside goal. And I agree with you. Why do articles say it may have been? It's like, well, look at it, and it is.
She was offside.
It's the same on TV where you're like, oh, is it close? And I'm like, use your eyeballs. You can see it. It's fine. Just say it.
Just say it's offside. It's
anyway,
offside.
The point is...
Anyway, it was offside.
There were opportunities. It was an exciting game. I was convinced that they were going to get a goal at the end, especially given they played about 12 minutes of injury time. But no, it was a draw, and Chelsea have dropped points. Still unbeaten, still 5 points ahead at the top of the table. It's a long way to go in the season, but I did always think that the potential points dropping would come from places that were unexpected.
It happened with Leicester, right, as well. I think the other thing it shows is that I think it illustrates it once again that while they have had this massive lead at the top of the table, on game-to-game basis, there isn't actually a 7-10 point gap between teams. They have been very, very ruthless.
If you interrogate the performances.
They've been very, very ruthless in what they've been able to do to be able to stretch the points, and also have relied on others dropping points as well. And that's what you do in any league season. But I don't think in terms of quality on the pitch, there's obviously a depth in quality there, but I do think it's not a 10-point difference in quality. It means that you can have games like you had on Sunday where it can be very tight.
Yeah. Okay, please tell me and our listeners / viewers your player of the week.
Player of the week. This is really tough. I'm going to go with Katie McCabe. And that might be controversial, I don't know. But I think she has had a torrid time of it of late. She gets a lot of criticism when she runs out for Republic of Ireland. As the captain, she is like the person that people criticise most. And some really, really unfair criticism. But I thought of Arsenal's defence, which was really, really creaky in the first half, she was the one that stood up and kept West Ham at bay as much as she could. And then she really turned it on in that second half. And that goal was just something.
She defied the laws of physics.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how that went in. Like, I need to slow it down and watch it frame by frame.
That goal just kind of epitomises Katie McCabe. It's her resilience, her vision, and then her absolute drive to just make it happen, whatever happens, whatever stands in her way. So I think, for me, it's her.
Love that. Okay, Sophie's spotlight moment. Have you got one, or shall I give something while you think about one?
I've got one.
Okay, go for it.
Well, I've got two. Well, I was going to do Katie McCabe's goal, but then I thought I couldn't do Katie McCabe's goal without doing Marissa Olaslager's goal either, because it was kind of the same angle, same position, equally as good a finish. But then I also thought, well, then you can't not shout out Sandy Baltimore's goal, because that was absolutely superb too. So three spotlights. And Leah Williamson's roly-poly.
Okay, that is
there you go. I've got 4.
I wanted to share very quickly. I was in the dugout, essentially in the tunnel for the Spurs versus Man City game, so it meant I was really close to the benches. And Gareth Taylor is renowned for watching the games from higher up in the stands. He likes to get a better view, and I totally get that. Like, I found the view from pitch side really quite flat, and actually you get such a better view just being up a little bit. But generally doesn't come down until he gets a little bit nervous or something's troubling him and he comes down. So, we were keeping an eye on that pitch side. 7 minutes in, he was down on the touchline and he never left. And I just thought it was really interesting because I could hear what they were saying on the bench and the things that were bothering them, the things they wanted to tweak. He'd turn and say, clip that up, I want to go over that. And it was just really insightful to see how managers see the game, what they react to, what they think needs to be highlighted at halftime and stuff. So I just thought that was really funny because I wanted to see when he came down, and came down a lot earlier than I thought he would. Okay, you are going to share our team of the week later on social media, so do keep an eye out for that. As we said, we've had a little bit on in the last 2 days that makes it feel like the weekend was 2 weeks ago. Right, we're going to run through the championship results this weekend and what it means for their table. We have Sheffield United 0, Portsmouth 2. First win for them, well done. Blackburn 0, Birmingham 2, Charlton 1, London City 1, Newcastle 3, Bristol 2, Sunderland 2, Durham 0. So it means Birmingham are sitting top on 32 points, London City on 29, Durham on 26, Charlton on 25, and then you've got Bristol City and Sunderland on 24 and Newcastle on 23. So a bit more of a gap now, a little bit of breathing room here and there. It's less congested, but still top
Birmingham
2,
have
3.
a game over everyone else. So they played one game more, but they have a superior goal difference, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
So they're still, even if like the London City win that game in hand and draw level on points, I think they edge it on goal difference.
Okay. Down the bottom now, Portsmouth have closed the gap on Sheffield. They're on 5 points with the Blades just about above them on
and Rovers
6.
Are on 7.
Yes, but Rovers have like 3 games in hand.
Oh, do they? Okay.
So these Sheffield and Portsmouth are on 15.
This is,
Blackburn are on 12.
We've got a relegation battle on the hand.
Absolutely. Yes. A quick word as well on Remy Allen's sacking. She was another manager that bit the dust last week from Southampton. The way I look at it was, obviously Southampton had really been pushing and building and growing and wanted to get promoted. Arguably brought in a relatively inexperienced manager to take over. Lost quite a few key players. Are sitting kind of 7th in the table now. Not going to get promoted. Not going to get relegated.
I think it's quite clear, like, their season hasn't been going the way they wanted to. They have always struggled a bit for inconsistency, and I think the hope was that in having new management, obviously Marion Spacey Kale has always been there behind the thing, and she's a driving force for that team, and it's not against her, but I think in bringing in fresh management, they thought maybe they could take the next step to maybe finding that consistency a bit more, and it just hasn't happened. I think they've lost players. They gained a lot on loan. I don't know about what the resource situation is there, but it seemed like they brought in a lot of players on loan over the winter period. Didn't really strengthen very much in the summer either in terms of building a squad that could really, have the depth to compete if there were injuries. They've had some key injuries as well. Rihanna Dean has been struggling with injury all season. Lucia Kendall has had an injury since the turn of the year, I think, so that's kept her out. She's absolutely key to that midfield area. So there have been some reasons behind it. I feel for Remy. I think she had so much going for, like, she still does, but after that kind of stint at London City where she kept them up last season, there was a lot of hype around her, and every manager in the early stages of their career is going to have ups and downs, and she will come back. She'll come back better for this situation and for the disappointment of it, I'm sure, and it won't be too long till we see her somewhere else.
Absolutely. Okay, just a very quick word on the news being leaked out of WPLL with the potential to pause relegation from the 26-27 season until the 2030-31 season, and it could come back in, but it's not guaranteed. And the goal of that is to close the gap, encourage more investment in clubs without the threat of relegation. Kind of think it's gone down like a bucket of cold sick, to be totally honest, if you're looking at social media. And my head's a bit boiled by it because I've been struggling to fully wrap my head around the business side of it, and I've really appreciated people getting in touch on both our Instagram and Twitter to kind of give their insight, discuss how they think it might be something that could be positive. And we've heard from people from Australia, we've heard from people from the USA talking about the positives of it. I'm still not fully convinced. Do you want to?
You finish. I do want to, but you finish.
I'm still not fully convinced, and I appreciate we need to try new things. But for me, and I read in an article about how there's quite a bit of support from the clubs further down the table, which is the very thing I'm worried about, is that there are some clubs who are happy to coast, who are just happy to have a team in the WSL and be able to say they have a team in the top flight and will invest enough to stay up. And I just don't understand why reducing the jeopardy and risk of relegation will encourage them to invest more, because to close the gap, you need to invest a lot. It's as simple as that. But
for me, I think it goes against everything about English football. That English football is the fact that you can be a team from the 5th tier and you can work your way up, all the way up to the top tier. And I'm not saying finances don't come into it. They do. Of course they do, especially in this day and age. But you still have that dream of being able to win things on merit and being able to get from, tier 5, tier 4, tier 3, all the way up to the WSL, and you can still win the WSL. And you can think about it like Leicester City in the men's game a few years ago, where they went on that magical Premier League won a title that they never should have won, given the balance of finances in the league. And that is a beautiful part of English football. We have always had relegation and promotion, and I do understand. I am fully for expansion. Don't get me wrong. We've been banging on about expansion for the last few years. Definitely think we need to go to 16 teams in each league. Need to open up the bottleneck from the Championship into the WNL, but I really do worry about the pyramid, and I worry about the teams not attached to a Premier League side, the likes of #United, who are currently leading the Southern Premier. What happens to them? Are they just gone, well, yes, you won the league, but
you don't meet the requirements.
You don't meet the requirements, or you don't have the money. I think there are fundamental issues around having a closed league in England where we don't have the same kind of financial controls that the likes of the NWSL have. There is a reason why it works in America and not here. It's because they have a salary cap of kind. They have, well, they don't anymore, but they've had drafts in the past and all of that stuff that enables those who finish bottom to have a dip into the best players. And we don't have those systems over here. So I think fundamentally, you're right. I don't understand how it increases competition. I don't understand how it incentivizes more investment. It might initially incentivize investment for a small handful of clubs who aren't currently doing it to get themselves into the top 16 of both leagues. But other than that, I don't see the incentive. I think also it's there are so many. I just don't understand why it seems to be the first option that we've heard of.
Yes,
for me, there are other ways of increasing competition, increasing investment, and stuff like that.
Increasing teams in the league.
You could have a minimum standard for starters, where you have a quite high bar for what clubs have to pay players and have personal, things like that. You could have playoffs. So in the Championship, you could have as you do in the men's game. You have the champion going through, and then you have a playoff system to decide the next promotional team. You could even have a playoff between the second from bottom and the WSL against the second in the Championship. That you could have a plate competition coming in when the League Cup goes out and the group stage finishes in December. You have a plate in the year to have another trophy for people to play for. And then we don't even know what the influence of European football is going to have on all of this, or on the game, the wider game. There's a Europa Cup happening next year. It's all coming into fruition.
Yeah.
And I just really worry that they've kind of picked this idea. It suits the big board members or the big owners because they realise that once they close the shop, they won't open the shop. I do really worry about that, because if it comes to a vote again in 2030, why would those owners vote to make themselves go down? I just don't get that.
Yeah. I think the concern is that it just feels like we've gone from A to Z and skipped all the other options potentially. And look, it hasn't been confirmed. We don't know that it's going ahead, but it just feels like It
feels like the direction of travel.
Yes, and and you add in the B team stuff,
and then you add in I do think, I don't want to trample on the WPL, because I do think they are trying to do lots of good things, and I think they care. But I think it's just it's ham-fisting it away in a way without the consultation of the fans first kind of aspect of it.
Definitely want to watch.
Well, player first and fan first.
Yeah. Okay. This week, we will be covering West Ham versus Manchester City on Wednesday. Chelsea are also playing Leicester on the same night. So got some WSL action midweek. We've then got the FA Cup quarterfinals this weekend. Manchester United are taking on Sunderland on Saturday. Then Manchester City are facing Villa, Arsenal versus Liverpool, and Chelsea versus Palace. Which one are you most looking forward to? We are doing Arsenal versus Liverpool.
We are doing. Probably United, or just because it's Sunderland and United. I think that's
the
just
story
the
in
FA Cup in it. So it's
we will of course do a live on Saturday as well. So do join us for that. Always fun chatting through all of the drama of the week and hearing from you and your opinions and your questions. Otherwise, we'll be back with our next episode of Extra Time with Girls on the Ball early next week. We'll chat to you then.
Super sub, Rach.
Oh. Thanks for doing that right at my outro. It was such a great time to throw that in.
Added it in.
We do have a super sub coming up. We are going to have the LMR's interview dropping this week as well. God, I've got lots to edit, don't I? So yeah, we will wrap this up. We will see you earlier than next week. You will hear from LMR's on Thursday. That is the goal. And then we will be back early next week. So we will chat to you then.